Hi, good afternoon. My name's Sadie Groom. I'm the CEO of Bubble Agency that does the PR and marketing for this show. And I'm also the founder and CEO of RISE, which is the Association for Women in the Broadcast and AV Industries. So I've got some great guests here with me today. Obviously, we're talking about podcasting. It'd be really good to know who in the audience, so we're not teaching firemen how to put out fires, as Jay said to me the other day. Who's a professional podcaster at the moment?
Which of the demographics monetizes and is a professional podcaster? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. So that's good.
And sound engineers? God, look at that.
God,
You're all pros, so I don't need to teach you guys anything. You know everything.
You know everything.
Is there anybody who is thinking of doing a podcast kind of soon?
Right, okay. So that's
a handful of you.
A handful of you. Excellent. So I actually have quite an interesting history with podcasts, because when Ben asked me to do this, I went, oh no, I am probably the only person in the world that hasn't spent the past 5 years listening to podcasts. But then I thought, well, actually I do, because I listen to the West Wing Weekly, because I'm a massive West Wing fan, and I also listen to Desert Island Discs. So we were discussing, one of the things we're going to talk about here is actually what is a podcast. I've now started listening to This Is Entertainment, and I'm absolutely addicted to it. So I'm getting there, and these guys have been giving me some other podcasts to listen to as well for my list. So Alison, introduce yourself and tell us what you do in the wonderful world of podcasting.
Is it possible to turn my headphones up slightly? I've had headphones on for 30 years, so I'm completely deaf.
There's a little volume button, I think, on the side there. There you go.
1, 2. Can you speak?
1, 2.
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear us there? A little bit more. There you go.
Yay! Hooray, I can hear. Thank you very much.
Thank
Sorry
you very
about
much.
that. Very untechnical. I'm Alison Vernon-Smith. I'm what used to be called a radio producer. I'm now an audio producer because I do podcasts as well as radio programmes. I've done factual comedy. I've made podcasts for Wondery, Spotify, Audible, and for Radio 4 I made what was conceived as a podcast called Jonathan Pye, which was then bought by Radio 4 to go on to Sounds as a podcast, which then ended up being broadcast on Radio 4. So I've kind of done all of those things, but I've never started one off on my own as my idea, as you're going to do, which I think is really great if you do that.
So I'm Jai Williams. I own and started Voices, Sound and Media Soho. Used to be at Technicolor and then at Warner Brothers. Started the business 8 years ago, and it's predominantly a recording studio. Up until recently it was dialogue only, recording audio, and recently we've just gone into cameras. We've done it. We've gone and bought 3 cameras and an 8M, and we're starting to do video podcasting. And it's because of demand, supply and demand. We've had to go down that route. So
I was at a conference last week, and Tony Pastor from Goalhanger was speaking. And interestingly, they don't actually call them podcasts; they call them shows. So I guess my question is to you is, what do you think of them being? Are they shows? You've just invested in cameras, or are they podcasts? Most of them involve video these days. Should they?
You want to go first, or shall I?
I don't mind. Yeah. To me, I always call them shows too, because to me, the difference between a podcast and a show you have conceived of, there's a performance element, there's the performance of the host, you understand that you're broadcasting to a listener, you have an audience, and so you want to communicate with them in the best way possible, and you want to enrich that experience. So rather than it just being somebody with a microphone talking into the ether, it's somebody directing thoughts and ideas to a listener, and for the benefit of the listener. To me, that's a show. And it's having research, having briefs, having properly produced it, all of those things that go into making a show. And a podcast, I think, for me, has always been slightly similar. In fact, sounds much more spontaneous and something that you could just do to a few people that you want to broadcast to. But I think if you're going to try and get people's attention now in this hugely crowded market, it's a show. You have to grab their attention and have something that nobody else is doing, really.
Yeah. For me, I think a podcast, different to shows, is you don't have commissioning editors.
Yeah.
People aren't commissioning. You don't have constraints of commissioners. you want to make a show, the editing commissioners sculpt your show.
Yeah.
Podcasts, you have far more freedom. That's a good thing, that's a bad thing. There's a lot of stuff to get through, to get to the good stuff, but they are getting better. And as we all now know, what with the advent of cameras, they are becoming more and more like shows. The BBC is now, for example, is making a podcast which is basically a television show with people wearing headphones and microphones. The lines are getting blurred.
And involving talent, Tony was saying about the amount of money that they're spending on their talent at Goalhanger, and that does almost make it a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, people come into my studio now and they sort of set up the camera, set up the lights, and instead of wanting microphones, they want lavs. And it's just like, well, then we're just going straight back to broadcast. Next you're going to want certain LUTs, and
So, what do you think listeners / viewers' expectations of a podcast are, and does it differ with different age groups as well?
I would love to know actually what people expect from a podcast. I think it'd be quite nice to know, and if there is an age thing. I think for me there isn't definitely an age thing, in that I find it very difficult to listen to audio that has been badly made, it sounds crap, it's not being produced. It's just me, I think, because I've grown up listening and working in speech radio, so you kind of expect certain standards. I also want people to have a point of view, or they're there for a purpose. I think when podcasting first started out, there were just too many people who thought, well, all I have to do is sit and talk to a friend and we'll just chat about something, and no one will ever edit it and nobody will ever tell me anything's wrong with it. And so I think expectations are much, much bigger. I mean, the biggest podcasts are actually shows like Goalhanger's shows, and they're all very highly produced, recorded very well. And they're the top podcasts, if you want to call them podcasts. I think that's, are we splitting now into different markets of the podcast arena? I don't know. What do you think?
I think she's answered most of that. Really.
Sorry.
I mean, it's good. It's good. On a technical, as we say, on a technical standpoint, yes, when podcasts were first conceived, it was in a kitchen with a couple of mics, and obviously COVID sort of really brought that home. But as it's going on, people jump on the bandwagon with bigger budgets. Now, if you want to start a podcast, it doesn't have to be big budgeted, but it has to be well executed. I think that sound is, as you rightly said, is really important, because then if you have good sound, they'll listen. But a certain demographic doesn't want just sound. The younger age, I think, is split. You have a certain demographic that I'm looking through the crowd here will, like me, will listen to a podcast on their headphones, commuting, in the car, doing some painting and decorating, whatever. And then you'll have the younger generation that want pictures. They want to scroll, and that funnels them down to a podcast. So that's where the change is happening. A lot of the stuff that we're videoing isn't let out in its entirety. It's just used as trailers, basically.
So where do people go wrong? Why 5 reasons your podcast sounds shit. So
I think here we go.
As Ben titled.
Yeah, to be blunt, I think the market is flooded with equipment. There's a plethora of equipment. And yes, if you go out and buy a really poor microphone, it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to sound any good. You get the content across. If you go and buy a really expensive microphone, then what? You've got to have a really good room. Because if you've got a great microphone, you've got to put it in a decent room. The other thing that I find is where they really do fall down, where any podcasts, it's really not in your control. It's when you're interviewing someone. And you've got these great 2 or 3 clients, they're all remote, and one sits in what I call a corporate fishbowl. A room with a glass wall all the way down one side, company logo on a television and a big wooden desk. You can't edit it, because all you're going to get is reverb. So every time they cut it off the last word, that's a classic. And also, when you're doing interviews with your interviewees, you need to really say to them, please find somewhere quiet, somewhere soft. Gosh, we've done them where I've actually had to say to the person, stick your mobile phone on a stack of books, don't make it face you because that will pop and blow, stick it to the side and just send me the audio files, because do it over Zoom and it breaks up. So that's, I think, remote interviewing is the real catch point. Yeah.
Alison, anything further?
I think it's close to a question you're going to ask me later, which is, for me, the biggest mistake is, why are you making this? And who is it for? What are you trying to say? And it's all of the basic principles that you would apply to any program producer who came to you and said, I've got an idea about coffee. All right, well, what about it? What are you going to do, and who are you going to talk to, and why are you going to talk to them? So it feels, a lot of podcasts are comedians, and they put them in a studio, and to me they're often very underproduced. So it's not enough just to be funny, but if your podcast is just a bit of entertainment, that's fine in my book, but you have to be bloody funny to catch my attention for half an hour to listen to two blokes banging on at one another. So usually it is blokes, isn't it? So it's, why are you making it? Who is your audience? If you're doing a corporate podcast which is aimed at a very specific audience, that's fine, but then who's the best person to talk about that? Probably not your CEO or the person who's quite dull. Is it better that
not the FD?
Is it better that they're interviewed by somebody who's much better at broadcasting? So it's all of the think about it like a program. What is it for and who is it for? And I think too many of them don't do that.
What technology do you think people should be investing in? Obviously, we've got a whole show here.
The world's your oyster. It really is. I mean, I've seen some people ask me, can I come into your studio and can we just set up our mobile phones? They work for picture, but then the sound's going to be able to sync, and it's so get the best quality sound. I'm going to say that because I'm a sound engineer. All too often, any sound engineer in this crowd will know, whether it's podcast or any production, the sound is always second. But the most important is getting it sounding right. If you do want to stick up some cameras, just get a decent set of mics more than anything, and pick a decent place to do it in. I've listened to a podcast in the early days where a particular, I'm not going to name names, but it's out there, is talking to a named actor about food, and they're sitting in a restaurant. What a dumb idea. And they're eating
clanging
food.
around.
Oh, it's terrible, but you have to battle through to hear them eating this food, and they're talking about food. It's like, you would have been better off recording it in a recording studio, even if you had got catering to bring it in, and then do the sound effects afterwards.
Is it too cost prohibitive to go into a studio though? Do you think people will think, I can't afford to do that, so I'll sit in my airing cupboard? Yeah,
there's a lot of that. A lot of people are frightened of the costs.
Yeah.
And fair enough, I completely get that. You've just gone out and spent a lot of equipment. You don't want to then go and use a recording studio. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good idea. If you've got the right environment and you can create it, then I don't sort of say you have to go to a recording studio. I think it's, you can create a good environment, but as long as you've got the skills, holding a pen doesn't make you Shakespeare. It's you know what I mean? Just because you've got the tools, you've got to know how to use them.
How can people enrich their podcast to make it more of a show?
At the risk of repeating myself, think about what you're doing and why you're making it. And the other thing that I think people usually do is make them too long. I don't know about you. I've got about a half-hour attention span at the most, really. And unless it's really, really gripping, then anything after half an hour, I'm sort of losing the will, really. And a good edit is what most podcasts could do with.
Oh, yeah.
Even the ones that are very successful, I sometimes think, oh, God, you've really spun this out to make an 8-part series rather than the 5 parts that it should have been. Do some research into the people that you're having as guests. That, again, we're going to come on to that, I think, about guests. Length, good edit. Please edit them.
Do you think people just don't think about editing it? Do you think their mind is just on the record and they don't think about the edit?
Maybe. And also I think, but it comes about partly, I think, because you haven't done what I would have thought of as the first principle, which is to ask, what is this about? What is the story that you're telling? Everything's about stories. Yeah. So even within each section of your podcast, if you're doing 3 different interviews, what is the story of that interview? What are you trying to get out of that? What is the story of your podcast? What is the point of it? If you knew that, I think that you would be more able to cut some of the fluff, fluff out, and make it a bit more gripping and de-um.
Oh gosh.
People.
That's the next thing.
I mean, not everybody speaks in perfect sentences. I don't. So, help them along a bit.
Yeah, and that's all into the preparation, isn't it? I mean, Alison, if someone said, "Oh, I've got a great idea for a podcast. I'm going to do one." What is the first step? Is it to get the technology? Is it to find a studio? Is it to...
I think it's before you do any of that. Just ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? And who, why, who, what,
all the
where,
usual,
all the W's. And if you can't answer those, I think that's fine. But don't expect anybody to listen to it and appreciate it particularly. I mean, it's fine to make one. I think that was great if you go for do anything. But if you want it to make an impact, you've really got to put some thought into it, I think.
Do you think corporate ones are the worst?
I've actually made some corporate ones and they were great. They just let us get on with it. But they weren't about the thing. Some corporations, they want you to make a podcast about them. And they're usually very dull.
Yeah, very dull.
Very dull, with very dull people. So I made one for Harrods. And what it was Mariella Frostrop interviewing creative people who had something to do with Harrods, and we had a ball, and it was a really lovely thing to do because we just talked to all of these really interesting people and mentioned Harrods once, I think, in an hour. But that was very unusual, I think, for corporate. And Bell Stuff, I made one for Bell Stuff, and the same, they just left us alone, which was great.
What about AI? In podcast.
I've no idea.
Okay, so AI is obviously the new thing everyone's talking about. You can't get
No, you can't get away from it.
We've actually used a bit of AI in our one of the.
How?
So we green screen.
Yeah.
And then someone asked me if I could produce a room that looks like something from the Houses of Parliament. We went on to Artlist, I think it was. We went on to and created a room, and it worked. And we dropped that onto the back chroma key. Gaussian blur, and it worked. So that was the first sort of time I've ever used AI to build a set, really. What I have been looking at is building a set completely in green screen and then immerse the people in front. So they're sitting behind a desk so it looks like a television set. That's going to come fairly soon. That's not far off. Obviously, the other thing with AI is scripts. What I think we're going to see is a lot of people go, great, I've got an idea. AI, make me a script about this. Bosh. Full of inaccuracies, no one's editing it, they go straight off and off they go, and it's like, what a mess. And as we've all started to know now that you can start looking at AI media, especially visual, and you can start to see it, your eyes are trained, not all of it, don't get me wrong, some of it you can't. Scripts and things are going to become the same. It's going to become the same. You don't realise, but over, let's say, 4 years, there'll be a shape to everything that's being created. A certain veneer. A veneer. It's like, why is it not even just the look, just the text? Why is this podcast sounding quite similar to that podcast? Because they've used too much AI. It has to have that human interaction of each and every one of you making a podcast where yours is different to his and hers is different to that one, because you're writing. If you all use AI, there's something similar about what's going to happen. There'll be a slight overlap. And that will definitely...
Is there anything with AI on the sound technology front, or can it can it improve, make your podcast sound less shit?
As a tool, without a question of a doubt. Yeah, the new AI, even I'm looking at what I can use to just speed up my workflow. Just denoising more than anything. If you're sitting in a place, now if you do it in a place like this and you think, AI will sort this out, there is no way your audio is not going to have artifacts. It is. Be reasonable. If you can AI Descript, can you get rid of ums and ahs in an instant? But then you've got to bring it back into your DAW, Pro Tools, whatever you use, and then you've got to then redo all those cuts because they're terrible. They're just jarring cuts. Yes, it's sped up the process, but then you've still got to go back and fix it. You can't just leave it. So the AI will be good for the speed of that workflow. Trying to think what else AI is good for. I've seen people do editing, as in script editing. But there is a place for it. Yeah. But I think it's as long as you're controlling it. That's the main thing. Yeah.
There is quite a very well-known Radio 4 show / podcast, which I will not name, but I know the sound engineer quite well, And every week they make it, and he uses AI to correct factual errors.
Really?
Yeah, in the voice of the presenters.
Wow. See, I've not done that yet.
Yeah.
Start rewriting.
It happens
the
every
script.
week, apparently.
That's a good point you bring that, actually, just quickly, is also for you as producers, but also guests, because you've now got to make sure that they don't go and re-edit what you've just agreed to join. You know, so there's an area that's...
I hadn't have thought that.
Yeah, exactly. You sit there and happily be interviewed, and you're thinking, this is great. Then they go back and re-interview it completely and then what they reply to your answers, they kind of...
Really?
It can happen, I'm sure, but we get well, I don't personally, a lot of my guests or the people that come in, they get them to read out a certain copyright thing at the end, so that it can't be changed, as it were. Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah.
You mentioned guests. How do you work with guests? What do you tell them? Should people,
Well, because I'm a recording studio, I have them coming into my studio, and as we were saying earlier, the more, shall we say, corporate, the further away you get from artists, actors, radio presenters, they all know how to sit. You actually have to sort of say to them, please don't do this, don't rub your hand. I had one person clicking a pen all the way through. They're just not aware of what audio is. And so it's a case of giving your people that are going to join the podcast just a little rundown, especially if they have no idea about podcasting. Don't bang on the tables, don't rock away from them. It really is static. And even though you're trying to be funny sometimes, it's quite hard to get that real level of mic control, ums and ahs, etc. Oh, that's awful. Ums and ahs.
Ums and ahs. I would go from the production point of view, which is guests, obviously, tell them about the show. You can't guarantee that they've heard your podcast or know what the hell it's about, or what they're doing, or what they're booked for. Why do you want to talk to them? How long is the interview going to be? Who's going to talk to them? Why? I never, very, very rarely would you give questions. I'm sorry if this is teaching people to suck eggs about that, but some people actually ask you for questions, and you say, I don't know, I'll give you question areas, because I can mention him because he's horrible. Who's this? That singer. Who did?
Which one?
Which one? Irish. Famously hates women. Anyway, he was sent questions, and he prepared his answers and read out the questions. And when the producer tried to ask him to not do that, he went, "I'm just staying with the script," and that was it.
No.
So you don't.
He would not be a good guest.
He's very famous.
I'm not even going to guess in case I get it wrong.
But if you give people questions, there's a tendency, especially for people who've not used to being interviewed, to prepare a written answer. Yeah. And that's actually the last thing you want. But you do want to give them an idea about why they're there and what they're talking about, obviously. And to give them a bit of sense of direction. What if they've got any stories? Again, it's all about stories. If you can get 3 good anecdotes out of somebody, get them to tell those, and that will be much more interesting than pretty much anything else.
We've got a couple of questions. What are your thoughts on a bare bones production with a solo presenter, a format executed quite successfully by comedian Bill Burr?
What do you mean?
Can people just do a bare bones production? Do they need the studio? Do they need...
Depends on it.
Well, Bill Burr's quite controversial. Let's be honest about it. So whatever he says is going to be controversial.
Wherever he says it.
Wherever he says it, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's a podcast? Is it a stand-up comedian show? Just being... Is it engaging, I suppose? Is it just there to be monetized? I don't know. I've not seen it.
No.
Again, it's only worth doing if people are going to engage with it. And is it? I've not seen it. Is it a stand-up show? Just
I don't know.
I don't know. So
did somebody ask that question?
Yes.
Did somebody want to say what it is?
Anyone going
to be able to hear you anyway.
Say what it is?
I'll move on to another question. Does Adobe Podcast have potential as a tool for low-budget podcasts, or is it too imperfect to ever be used professionally?
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a working tool. It's the same. The only way I can answer that is I could give a bad guitar to Slash and he'll make it sound amazing. It depends who you are. If you're good at what you do and you're pretty talented with a bit of sonics, why not? It's just a tool.
Yeah.
Some of them are more limited than others. I personally am a Pro Tools engineer, so I use Pro Tools and it gives me everything I need. Another person will say, oh, I can't be bothered to sit and do all those cuts. I want to do it. You've got to put the work in to get the quality. It doesn't matter what tool you use. So that's the best I could give.
Do you believe tools like Descript will replace traditional DAWs?
Oh, that's what I spoke about. No. Descript is brilliant at what it. Descript is brilliant at what it does. It's fantastic, but when you then play the audio, the cuts are terrible. You've got to go back and put it back into a DAW, and you've then got to clean it up. You have to,
Thoughts on the overuse of sometimes AI one-button denoisers as an attempt to fix poor source sound?
Artifacts. That's all you're going to get is a bunch of artifacts. Everyone's going on about AI this, AI that.
Yeah.
It's not a fix-all. When you are trying to create a product that you are then expecting a crowd of people to listen to. If you just want to cheat with AI, what's the point? You're not. It's a tool.
Cheating.
Well, I wouldn't say it's cheating. It's a lazy tool. Yeah. If you're going to create a podcast, create one. Get someone, either yourself or someone, learn to edit. You don't have to pay for a sound editor. Learn yourself. What sounds good is not always just pure AI. Not yet, anyway. Not yet.
So, talking about not yet, Alison, what do you think the future of podcasting is?
No idea. I mean, who does? Who would have predicted even 5 years ago that we would be where we are? And who would have predicted that podcasts would become huge? I mean, I was at the BBC when we were made into BBC Studios, and radio was then going to have to compete and get try and get money from other sources other than the BBC. And at that time, honestly, this is only 8 years ago, there were no other sources. BBC was the only people buying speech radio, really. Audible had started but wasn't commissioned much, and now look at it. So you can't tell.
Just bought Wondery.
You probably know better than.
Was it OpenAI that bought a podcast recently of some tech guys in San Francisco?
Probably.
And it was just, they bought it for absolute millions. So.
I've seen these adverts now where you type the script in and then it gives you a person sitting there, and all right, if you want to watch that, then fair enough. But I can't see. I need to look really. I can't see it being as good as anything that these people can make.
What do you think the future is?
Again, I don't think you can predict the future. It does seem to get closer to broadcast. I do believe that they are getting closer and closer to a point where the younger generation are watching and engaging. I think with podcasting, I think that it's going to definitely become more than just a platform for. You're going to have live shows, which we're starting to see now. Yeah. Merchandise, which Diaries of a CEO. Look at the merchandising. Books, mugs, T-shirts. It's becoming much bigger than just a podcast. It's a whole entity.
And everyone's going to have to look to. They are being commissioned, I guess. We talked about podcasting commissions. I guess they are being commissioned.
The one I work on, British Scandal, which was then Wondery and now Audible. That's a commissioned podcast. It's huge.
Well, we can't predict the future
podcasts, but we will all listen to them. I think any podcast you want to recommend?
Well,
obviously British Scandal.
I'm British Scandal, so I'm biased.
I'm really sorry. There was one I was going to look at. I heard it a few times. It's about bird watching. I'm not a bird watcher, and it was actually something I was going to mention because it's made by this woman who's completely passionate about birds and bird watching, and it's fab. I'm so sorry, I can't remember. Maybe if you Google it, you'll find it.
You won't be able to find it.
But passion, I was going to say, actually, passion and enthusiasm in your host is absolutely key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for listening. So, thank you to my guests as well.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.